Hey everyone, it's Flackfire. Battlefield 1's campaign is centered on the idea of war stories and will follow several characters and their involvement in World War I. DICE released some new information the other day, so here's what we know regarding the game's single-player experience. Obviously, some spoilers may follow. It's now been confirmed Battlefield 1's campaign will follow at least 5 characters: a fighter pilot, armor crewman, rebel fighter, message runner, and assault soldier. According to data mined information, each character represents an episode, and each episode has multiple missions. Some details are still up in the air, but here's what's been confirmed about the characters and missions so far. The fighter pilot story, Friends in High Places, surrounds the war in the skies over the Western Front and the friendship between a pilot and observer. Many people romanticize aerial combat in World War I, but it was actually quite brutal. The life expectancy of a combat pilot was a little over 2 weeks. We followed the two characters in a very dire moment of the war, when the Entente powers were struggling against the Imperial German Flying Corps. We're used to playing the favorite in many war games, but in Battlefield 1, you're the underdog more often than not. Early in the war, German aces developed an almost mythical status, and the Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen, was no exception. DICE has hinted at the historical character's appearance in Battlefield 1 through the game's pre-order bonuses, but also by comparing him to Lawrence of Arabia when describing the game's campaign. Richthofen's official tally sits at 80, but it's possible he shot down upwards of 100 airplanes. Seeing his airplane in the sky would surely strike fear into the hearts of pilots, though because of his tactics, you'd likely never see his airplane until it was too late. This may be the unexpected encounter DICE hints at in the description for Friends in High Places. Battlefield 1's single-player campaign trailer also shows aerial battles, zeppelins, and ground attacks, so this episode should encompass a great deal of the war over the trenches in World War I. The armor crewman's story, Through Mud and Blood, follows the character Danny Edwards as he joins a dysfunctional tank crew who battle their way behind enemy lines and learn to work together. Edwards isn't a battle-hardened soldier, he's a former chauffeur, and he's struggling with earning the trust of his fellow tankers. Thankfully, Edwards knows more than just how to drive. He's also a skilled mechanic, something which will come in handy during the campaign, since World War I tanks were anything but reliable. DICE confirmed one of the chapters in Edwards' war story is called Fog of War and offered some details, stating, quote, "Here you suddenly find yourself in a misty forest. Due to the low visibility, you're moving ahead of your tank on foot, clearing camps of enemies," end quote. It was not uncommon for armor crew members to walk outside of their vehicles whenever possible. Temperatures inside tanks could rise to 120 degrees, that's nearly 49 degrees Celsius. The air temperature was terrible and the noise tremendous. In this mission, DICE says you will have a choice to go in guns blazing or opt for a more stealthy approach, dispatching enemies with melee attacks. Either way, there will come a point in the mission where you go toe-to-toe with an enemy tank that can be captured and used for the encounter. The developers behind Battlefield 1 say these kinds of options encourage players to play the game their way, just like they would in multiplayer. Through Mud and Blood takes place as part of the 100 Days Offensive, leading to the end of World War I. Specifically, Edwards and the tank crew will be fighting in an offensive near the French town of Cambrai in the fall of 1918. The rebel fighter story, Nothing Is Written, takes place in the deserts of the Middle East. As a Bedouin warrior, you'll fight alongside T.E. Lawrence against the oppression of the Ottoman Empire. Outnumbered and outgunned, you'll wage asymmetrical warfare against a technologically superior enemy. The Ottoman Empire has a massive railgun and an armored train, but you have the desert. DICE says the Bedouin warrior will use her resourceful playstyle to scout enemy encampments, liberate the equipment needed, and draw the armored train out to a final confrontation. As in Edwards' war story, how this is done is up to you and your playstyle. We've seen the Bedouin warrior is a capable fighter, and Bedouin women did fight against the Ottoman Empire, most notably near the city of Petra. It was also revealed the armored train now officially has a name, Canavar, which translates to beast in Turkish. Meeting Lawrence of Arabia in the campaign will be an interesting experience. Lawrence is somewhat of a controversial figure in the Middle East. Some see him as a betrayer, while others see him as betrayed by his own government. Regardless, it will be interesting to see how he's portrayed in a major video game. The message runner story, The Runner, puts you in the boots of an Australian and New Zealand Army Corps soldier during the Gallipoli campaign. You'll land on the beaches, fight tooth and nail for every inch of Ottoman soil, and will be tasked with delivering life or death messages across the front line. Generally, a runner's duty was to deliver messages first and to fight second. Because they carried vital information, this often made them a target for enemy sharpshooters. Gallipoli was an amphibious invasion, the likes of which the world wouldn't see again until the beaches of Normandy and Iwo Jima in World War II. Over 500,000 men were involved in the invasion, and many would never return. It's an important moment in both Turkish and Anzac culture, so I'm very excited to see it in Battlefield 1. For the assault soldiers' war story Avanti, Savoia, you'll fight on the Italian front against the Austro-Hungarian army in the mountains of the Alps. This story follows the elite Italian mountain regiment Arditi as they make an unorthodox assault in an effort to dislodge the invaders. You'll don impressive combat armor and fight your way up the mountainside, attempting to secure a massive strategic fort. During World War I, the Italian army fought a series of losing battles in the Alps before turning the tide near the end of the war. The Arditi preferred close-quarters combat, often carrying only grenades and knives to assault enemy positions moments after artillery barrages. Their motto translates to, quote, "We either win or we all die," end quote. And it was not an empty promise. An entire unit was wiped out during an assault in 1916. Battlefield 1's campaign is also rumored to contain a prologue and epilogue, so it's not clear if more war stories will be featured or even teased for a sequel. Regardless, I like the way DICE has organized the single-player campaign in Battlefield 1. World War I was such a massive conflict spanning several continents. The developers would be hard-pressed to create a single storyline while showcasing the truly global nature of combat that was the Great War. Even with the war stories mentioned here, DICE has only scratched the surface of its potential. Now that we finally have some concrete details on what will be included in Battlefield 1's single-player campaign, what are your thoughts? Tell me in the comments. A couple big notes here. I wanted to share with you that I've been granted permission to film at the National World War I Museum and Memorial in Kansas City. I'll be traveling there sometime in the next couple weeks to do that, so if there's anything you'd like me to cover, please tell me in the comments below. Additionally, I just started a Patreon and I'm already about 1/10 of the way to my goal for a new PC. Donations will also help cover the cost of my trip to KC, so if you'd like to contribute, there's a link to it in the video description. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, share on websites like Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.